I call to order the June 21st, 2016 meeting of the Arvada Planning Commission. Ms. Brown, would you please call the roll?
Randy Caswell, Steve Hannon, David Baugh,
Present.
John Sullivan,
Here.
T.O. Owens.
Here.
Patricia Connell.
Here.
John Kraus.
The chair moves to excuse Mr. Hannon, Mr. Kraus, and Ms. Caswell from the meeting. And additionally, I'd like to make the motion also to recuse Ms. Caswell, as the applicant is one of her largest clients, and she often works on matters of this type with that client. And so she'd have to recuse herself anyway. This being the only item on the agenda, she decided to go ahead and skip the meeting, miss the meeting as a result. Commissioners, please cast your votes. And that passes 4-0, all commissioners present voting in favor. All right, the minutes for the June 7th, 2016 meeting have been submitted for approval. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Did you say yes? No? There being no corrections, the minutes stand approved as printed. Moving on to general business, there are no general business items tonight. We'll move on to reports, and there are no reports tonight. And that gets us to the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd please rise and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the next item is petitions and communications. This is a time when anyone may address the commission regarding items that are not listed as public hearings on tonight's agenda. The public hearings for tonight are the Moon Gulch Substation at Candelas Comprehensive Plan Amendment, the Moon Gulch Substation at Candelas Rezoning, and the Moon Gulch Substation at Candelas Outline Development Plan. Additionally, we would ask that you would hold your comments regarding any application that has been filed with the city or which is likely to be filed with the city until the public hearing on those items, where we will welcome your comments. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the commission regarding anything else? No? So we'll move on to public hearings. At this time, I'd like to explain the procedure for public hearings. The applicant will be given an opportunity to make a presentation. After the presentation, I will ask those who are in favor of the applicant to speak, and then those who are in opposition. The applicant will then be given an opportunity for rebuttal if appropriate, if needed. After all the testimony has been heard, the public input portion of the hearing will be closed and questions will be taken from the Planning Commission. I would now like to swear in anyone who wishes to speak in any public hearing tonight, in any public hearing matter before this commission this evening. Please rise, raise your right hand, and I'll swear you all in now. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in matters before this commission is the truth and nothing but the truth? If so, please answer, I do. Thank you. You may be seated. All right, the hearings on tonight's agenda are the Moon Gulch Substation at Candelas Comprehensive Plan Amendment, Moon Gulch Substation Land Use Designation, Moon Gulch Substation at Candelas Rezoning, and the Moon Gulch Substation at Candelas Outline Development Plan. Staff, are there any posting or notification requirements?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the applicant was required to post signs on site and then also send out letters, and that is all in order.
Okay. The staff report, posting log, and affidavit of mailing are made a permanent part of the record. Are there any additions or corrections to the staff report?
No, Mr. Chair.
If there is there a representative of the applicant present? Please state your name and give us your address for the record, and then you may proceed.
Mr. Chair, can I just
Yes.
interrupt? I do have a little bit more to add to the presentation before the applicant makes his presentation. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So the applicant, Public Service Company of Colorado, PSCO, represented by Jeffrey Walker, is requesting approval of a comprehensive plan amendment, an outline development plan amendment, and to rezone 4.3-acre parcel in order to construct an XL electric power substation. The property is located within the Candelas Town Center, a master plan development on the northeast corner of State Highway 72 and Candelas Parkway. The 4.3-acre parcel is proposed to be rezoned from Plan Unit Development, PUD, Business, Professional, Residential, PUD, BPR, to Heavy Industrial District, I2, and restricted to allow only an electric substation. The property is indicated on the comprehensive plan, land use plan as mixed use. A comprehensive plan amendment is necessary with the rezoning to designate the parcel as industrial character. The ODP amendment is also necessary to remove the parcel out of the ODP to reflect the rezoning of I2, a standard zone district. Staff is recommending approval of the project based on the approval criteria found in the Land Development Code. The applicant is in attendance for a presentation and question. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for that. The applicant may proceed. Please give us your name and spell it for us. Give us your address for the record, then you may proceed.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Walker, Jeffwalker. Is this loud enough? Okay. My business address is 1800 Larimer Street, Suite 400, Denver, Colorado, 80202. Okay, so the reason we're here tonight is requesting a rezoning for the 4.3-acre parcel, approximately 4.3-acre parcel, otherwise known as Lot B, of Block 1D of Beaumont Minor Subdivision Number 3 in the Candelas development. The purpose of the rezoning is so that Excel, otherwise known as PSCO, can build a 230 kV substation to deliver reliable electricity to the Candelas development and surrounding areas. Okay. The substation is needed to meet the increasing demand for electricity. Just in Candelas, we expect somewhere around 2,000 houses. That's just in the Candelas development. There's commercial development of several million square feet. Just today, I learned that there is a company that's looking for an approximately 10-acre parcel, not only in Candelas, but in other areas. And they expect a startup load of 50 megawatts with a build-out load of 100 megawatts. And just to give some idea how large that is, 1 megawatt powers 1,000 houses, single-family houses. So that's quite a large load that we need to serve. We performed a siting study that identified the subject location as the best location for a substation. We looked at things like environmental concerns, habitat, contamination, proximity to the existing transmission line, proximity to existing feeders, topography, residential uses, business uses, commercial uses, et cetera. And we determined that the site that we're considering tonight is the best for the substation. It sits adjacent to an existing 230 kV, 230 kilovolt transmission line, immediately adjacent to it. So it's only about a 250, 300-foot span of transmission line that will be needed to power the substation. And the terrain is flat. It's in a business area, so it's not extremely close to residential. It's close to the existing transmission line. Like I mentioned. So the visual impacts will be minimized because we don't have to construct a new transmission line to reach this substation, and it's already next to tall structures. So it's those impacts will be limited in their scope, in their geographic scope. There are 3 to 4 existing substations that serve this area already. The Sim substation, the Ralston substation, and the El Dorado substation. Those are approximately 3 to 6 miles away from this location. While that's good to serve the existing development, it won't be sufficient to reliably serve future development, what we anticipate to happen there. A certificate of public convenience and necessity was approved by the Public Utilities Commission in January 2016. earlier this year. And the substation will meet all Colorado standards for noise and EMF. The Public Utilities Commission has a standard. It's not a numbered standard, but it says that utility companies have to do take every precaution, take every measure to minimize exposure to milligauss, which is EMF. That's how EMF is measured. And at our property line, it will be the minimum exposure before it just gets lost. Piesco owns a parcel just to the west, about 3/4 of a mile to the west in Northwest Industrial Development. That parcel could be built on. We could site the substation there, but there are a few problems that make this site better. One is that it's a very small parcel, and it would take an extraordinary amount of effort and finances to make that a safe environment for our employees to work in, meaning that we'd have to have firewalls, and the turning radii aren't sufficient, barely sufficient to handle the trucks that we would need to bring in to construct and operate and maintain. We would also have to construct about 3/4 of a mile of transmission line to power that substation. It's farther away from the load center, and the load center is the main activity center for electrical demand. That load center is at Highway 72 in Indiana. So it'd be about 3/4 of a mile too far. We like to keep the substations within 2 miles of the load center. So that would be just beyond that, by about 3/4 of a mile. If this rezoning is done, then Piesco is prepared to negotiate with the city to sell that parcel for a new water system and a communications tower. Last time I checked with the Public Works Department, that was still on the table. They were still interested in that, and this would help facilitate that move. Okay, this is a high-level overview of how electricity works. It starts at the generation center, either by fossil fuels, wind, solar. It goes through the transmission lines, like what crosses Highway 72 next to the substation site, the proposed substation site. It drops into a substation where the voltage is reduced from 230 kV or 115 kV to a distribution level, which is about 13 kV. From the distribution, at the distribution level, then it goes along either the overhead or underground lines. The overhead are what you see now paralleling Highway 72. And it'll go to those till it gets to those little gray cylinders that hang on those poles, and that's a transformer also, and that drops it down to service level, which is 110 volts, and then it enters either the house or the business or whatever the use is, and then it hits the outlet. We have a vicinity map, and the white square in the upper central part is the substation site. The red line that comes down from northeast to southwest and then due south is the transmission line. That's the 230 kV transmission line I mentioned earlier. So this the site that we've chosen is adjoining the transmission line right of way. You can see to the south, there's a Layden Rock development. Immediately to the north of Candelas Parkway, we have the residential development, and that's just what we see there. This is an older photo. There might be more out there now that I'm not aware of. This is a site plan view of the site and some of its immediately adjacent surroundings. Not the squares, but the other white figures on there are approximate locations and potential footprints of buildings. They're conceptual at this point. The street network is still conceptual. Even the substation, what you see is conceptual. It hasn't been designed yet. We're starting civil design right now. But this just shows that the parts and pieces that go inside of a substation can fit, and they're pretty close to fitting in this area. The aesthetic portion of it, we anticipate having a fence, an enclosure that looks something like one of these three. We'll be working with the developer of the larger parcel, Candelas business parcel, to get something that matches so it's a seamless transition between Piesco's parcel or the substation parcel and the rest of the development. We don't want to stand out like a sore thumb. The National Electrical Safety Code, which is our guideline, the utility industry's guideline, what every utility company has to follow, it requires a minimum 7-foot enclosure. This one shows an 8-foot enclosure. That's the only thing that we can guarantee. The spacing of the brick or the split face columns, the exact type of fence, we'll work with the developer on that as that development builds out or as they progress towards that. We developed a couple of line of sight profiles. At the top of the larger image, you'll see 2 points. The point 1 is on the left, point 2 is on the right, and the lower point is the substation site. The profile that you see shows what is visible from the observation point 1. The red areas are not visible. The green areas, or the areas lined in green, are visible. So you can see that the tower, which will probably be the tallest structure inside the substation at about 60 feet, is visible from that point, but that's about 3,000 feet away, so just over half a mile away. The diameter of that structure inside the substation will be about 2 feet, 2 to 3 feet wide. It'll be pretty hard to see, and I have a photo simulation of one coming up in a bit where you'll be able to get a better idea of what that would look like from some distance. Okay. This is from observation point 2, and you can see that the substation wouldn't be visible at all from that location because of the ridge. We also put together some photo simulations, like I mentioned earlier. The top photo, or the top photo is existing conditions. That's an actual photograph. The lower photo simulation shows what that site would look like from the intersection of Candelas Parkway and Highway 72 with some conceptual buildings and the substation in the background. This photo is about 650 feet from the substation site. You can see the existing transmission structure pretty clearly, but the other structures inside of the proposed substation are pretty hard to see, but they are visible. But like we said, or like I said, as it builds out, we expect it to be pretty difficult to see. I also included an aerial and a photo of an existing substation in Arvada. This is our Russell substation at 51st and Carr. It was built in the 1960s when this was pretty much farmland, and you can see how the residential development has built in around the substation. Just to the south used to be an old train line, one of those interurban lines. So that the left photo is an aerial, the right photo is a street view image. And that's looking east from Carr. This is another substation. It's not in Arvada, it's in Westminster near 88th and Pierce. This one was built in the 1970s. This is probably closer to what we anticipate the surroundings of Moon Gulch to look like. It's business, commercial establishments. I included 2 Google Earth Street View images. Let me go back a second. Along with this, one image is taken due west. That's the first image you'll see. Then the next image is taken from the northwest, looking towards the substation. So this is the first image looking due west at the substation. The substation is right behind that building. The second image is looking to the southeast, and it's behind those trees in the building. So as Candelas builds out, we expect the view of the substation to be blocked by other buildings, trees, et cetera. I'm sure, of course, from some vantage point it'll be visible, but for most, it won't be. So the impacts that we anticipate are pretty minimal. Substations are pretty good neighbors because nobody's manned there, nobody's stationed there. The traffic is really low. So the use on this parcel will only be for an electrical substation with this rezoning. So if it does pass, for some reason the substation is decommissioned, the next owner, if Piesco were to sell it, or if the substation project is canceled, the next owner would have to go through a rezoning unless it's another utility company, for any use of that parcel. Glare, there's none. We don't typically, we don't have lights inside the substations except for emergency repairs, and that's the only time they're on. Federal regulations are looking at requiring us to add lights inside of substations for security purposes. That hasn't been passed yet, or those changes haven't been made, but it's possible. If so, we'll work and make sure that they fit the federal regulations and the city regulations as closely as possible. We don't have that situation yet. We don't have any substations that have 24-hour lights on them, though. Our municipal services substations are pretty self-sufficient. They don't need sewer lines. We have a couple that do have bathrooms in them, but not many. This one is not proposed to, at least not yet. But municipal services are non-existent in most of them. Potable water at least, is not necessary in them. Trash pickup isn't needed for most of the ones, or any of the ones that I'm familiar with. An increase in noise, none. There are only a few moving parts inside of a substation. That's really the fan that cools the transformer. Odors, none. Stormwater management, we anticipate a regional detention facility. Piesco's engineers and the Candelas development team's engineers have been speaking already about where that would go and what size it would need to be to take the stormwater runoff from this site. Traffic, probably one pickup truck per month would come out to inspect the site, make sure there's no damage, graffiti, weeds, trash, stuff like that. Water, like I mentioned, none, at least not potable. Wildlife, that's not an issue in this area. Vegetation, whatever the landscape theme is throughout the development, we'll be able to adhere to that. And vibrations, none. And that's all I have for a presentation. I'll be happy to take questions if this is the time for that.
Okay. Actually, at this point, we'll open it up to the questions from the public, or statements from the public.
Okay,
And
thank you.
then later on, we'll open it up to questions from the commission.
Okay.
So I will now open the hearing for comments from the public. Is there anybody who would like to speak in favor of the application? Yes. Yep. Please go ahead and state your name and give us a spelling and your address for the record. And
Sure.
then
My
we'll
name
proceed.
is Charlie McKay, 9855 Blue Mountain Drive, Arvada, Colorado, 80403. I'm certainly in favor of this. First, I need to disclose that I am one of the developers of the Candelas project and been working on it for a number of decades, and we're delighted to see it going. This facility has been needed. We've known this for 10 or 15 years, that we were going to be low on power and low on redundant power. In other words, power coming from two directions. And as Mr. Walker presented, there's a lacking of power as well. So I certainly support it. We do need it for the growth. It is not only for Candelas, it is for the region. So even without Candelas, we need additional power there. So I certainly support it, and if you have any questions of me, please ask.
All right. Thank you,
Good.
Mr. McKay.
Good, thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak in favor of the application? And same, please state and spell your name and give us your
Greg
address.
Bradbury, GreggBradbury, 8775 Blue Mountain Drive, Arvada, Colorado. I'm also a partner with Charlie and a developer in Candelas. I've been doing a lot of research on the commercial side, and something that Jeff indicated was the Sims substation, which is about that three and a half miles away from this site, has 8 megawatts available. That's the closest substation that serves this area. That also serves the Interlochen area. And that's first come, first serve, the way Excel works. And at some point in the very near future, we'll be out of power here in Arvada. So therefore, everything will stop, as far as what we've been doing on a commercial side. We're doing dirt work right now for King Soopers out there, and a marketplace store with all the surrounding pads. We have contracts with and letters of intent with various users out there. We're under contract with Exempla for essentially 25 acres, about 200,000 square feet, an eventual build-out of medical office building out there. We need the substation for the power out there. That's the quickest way to stop the development is not have power and not have water and stuff. So we need the need the power out there to be able to keep going. We also need the water. Luckily, we have enough of that, so which is good for now. But I just wanted to end up because we had a 100-acre user that was a data center that had approached us, a national company. I can reveal it. It's Morgan Chase, and they were looking for 100 acres. Our site was selected to be reviewed along with another site at I-25, and I think it's around 140 or something like that, or Highway 7. They chose that site because our substation wasn't going fast enough and it wasn't in place. They're having problems closing on that site. They've closed 2 deals, or they have 2 deals here in the state. They've closed one of them. We could end up coming back to life on that. The 50 megawatt user, that's a 10-acre user, we're proposing that goes right next to the substation, because that would be a perfect user, 100,000 square foot building. All these bring jobs and, great economic benefit to the city. So it's something that we're very excited about, but we need power. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak in favor of the application? Is there anybody who would like to speak against the application? You know the drill, Mr.
Yep. Hey, everybody. My name is Brandon Figliolino. That's Figliolino. I live at 7893 Allison Way, Unit 302 in Arvada. I am just concerned with this project because we are continuously seeing changes to the comprehensive plan, and in particular, changes to mixed-use designations. A couple of months ago, a mixed-use development on the other side of Candelas was scrapped for single family, and now another section is being potentially scrapped in a very busy area, Candelas Parkway and 72. So I feel like we're missing opportunity when we're changing the comprehensive plan in this manner. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I don't think it's mathematically possible, but is there anybody else who would like to speak against the application? No. All right. Would the applicant like to address in a rebuttal the comments, or it's not required, but you have the opportunity to rebut the comments?
Thank you. I guess I don't need to address the ones in favor. The concern about the mixed use, the changes to the comp plan, I'll make an attempt to address on the fly. Like Mr. Bradbury and Mr. McKay mentioned, part of the necessity of development is having power and water, and ideal in the power business. So without these types of facilities, they have to be somewhere, and they have to be somewhere that's suitable for them. We look for low impact areas that won't disrupt the day-to-day life of folks who have to live there. In these areas, in business settings, they tend not to be they tend not to be disruptive anywhere, but especially in the business area, because those businesses rely on reliable power. So like banks that need access to their computers, and data centers that need reliable power so the servers don't go out. They tend to look for these types of facilities. So I think that in this location, specifically this location, it'll be very compatible with the surrounding areas. And even though this 4-acre parcel will be zoned industrial, it still supports the mixed-use development that we anticipate to go on, to be developed around it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
At this time, I'll close the public input portion of the hearing, and I will now open the hearing for discussion, questions, or comments from members of the Planning Commission. Mr. Goff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for the applicant. I'm just curious, I'm vaguely familiar with Highway 72, and obviously look at this, the Candelas area. What consideration did you have in terms of locating it on the north side of 72 versus the 70 south side? Because it looked like the south side is more industrial, more conducive to a plant like this.
That's correct, and we did look there. One of the biggest ones, we had a willing landowner on the north side, and we did not on the south side. And there are some real topographical challenges on the south side also. All of those parcels on the south side are used, that they're occupied. So that was one of the hangups that we had. And then once we got to the, that's the area immediately adjacent to 72 on the south. Once we got farther to the south in that same development, the terrain got too rough for us to work with. It drops off too fast, and just we didn't want to touch that.
That's fair. And I do just have one other question is, if I was looking at the property, one of the things you mentioned was there's a 60-foot tower with a 2 to 3 foot, I guess is the diameter, the pole itself. And are there several towers that are 60 feet tall, or one that's 60 feet tall and several that are shorter?
There's something called that we call the goalpost. It's really a dead end, which means that's where the transmission lines come into before they drop down into the transformer and the breakers and the switches and the rest of the bus work. So that's often, well, in some cases, that's the tallest structure. We also have what's called a static wire, and that's to protect it from electrical strikes. And those can be around 80 feet, but it depends on some things like how far they are apart. That's not shown on there because we don't know how that will be designed, but we can guarantee you a 60-foot structure. The other one could be from 70 to 80, but those are extremely small. Those are about a foot in diameter.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments? Ms. Connell?
This is in reference for you also, and this may seem naive, but if you, and not familiar with some of that, but you explained quite a bit. Is there any type of mitigation as far as aesthetic, like plants, bushes, or anything to soften the area that is created, or is that impossible because of the electrical lines and things like that?
Yes, that is possible. We don't like, well, for overhead transmission lines, we don't like trees underneath our
Right.
transmission lines. That's obvious. And for several of our substations, especially the newer substations, we dress those up a little bit more than we've done in the past. I used to be on Denver's Planning Commission, or Planning Board, so I understand the aesthetic concerns of that you guys have to consider. So in this case, we'll be working with the developer, so we have one seamless one. Since we were lucky enough to find a spot within a raw development, we don't have to try and fit this in. We can grow with the rest of the development. We'll probably be the first kid on the block, but we'll be not. I anticipate the other developments won't be. The other buildings won't be far behind. So we'll be able to work in one and probably use some. I anticipate us using some of their contractors to help develop our site as far as vegetation goes. Does that
Yes,
answer your
thank you.
question? Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments? No. Seeing no further discussion, is there a motion? No. Mr. Goff?
Let me turn this on first. I move that CP 2016-0003, a resolution by the Planning Commission for the City of Arvada, Colorado, to amend the 2014 Arvada Comprehensive Plan land use designation pertaining to Moon Gold Substation at Candelas from mixed use to industrial for property located at the northeast corner of Candelas Parkway and State Highway 72 to be adopted subject to the conditions stated in the staff report, items 1 through 3, page 15. This motion is based on the considerations on page 11 and 12 of the staff report.
Is there any discussion of the motion? No. Then commissioners, cast your votes. And that passes 4-0. All commissioners present voting in favor. And Mr. Goff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that Z 2016-0001 Moon Gulch Substation at Candelas rezoning from City of Arvada PUD BPR Planned Unit Development Business Professional Residential to 1-2 Heavy Industrial located at the northeast corner of Candelas Parkway and State Highway 72 be recommended to City Council for approval subject to the conditions stated in the staff report items 1 through 3, page 15. This motion is based on the findings of fact and approval criteria on pages 12 and 13 of the staff report.
Is there any discussion of this motion? Commissioners, cast your votes. And that passes 4-0. All commissioners present voting in favor. Mr. Goff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that ODP 2016-0001 Candelas Outline Development Plan Amendment 4, located at the northeast corner of Candelas Parkway and State Highway 72, be recommended to City Council for approval. This motion is based on the findings of fact and approval criteria on pages 13 and 14 of the staff report.
And is there any discussion of the motion? Commissioners, cast your votes. And that passes 4-0. All commissioners present voting in favor. And that's the last one, right? Yep.
Sir.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. It sounds like a lot of thought went into it, and I like that certainly there were considerations of alternative sites. It sounds like it was pretty well thought out. Continue to work with staff. I'm sure you are familiar with the process, but that would be your point of contact in getting you to City Council and the next steps. All right, moving on to other items. Staff, are there any other items to consider this evening?
I've got a couple of things for you here. The first one, I know you'll be disappointed in this, but we'd like you to cancel the July 5th meeting as we have no items.
Okay, July 5th.
So we'll need a motion on that.
Would anybody like to make a motion on that? Mr. Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move that we cancel the July 5th meeting of the Planning Commission.
Is there any discussion of the motion? Commissioners, cast your votes. And that passes 4-0. All commissioners present voting in favor.
Okay, so that means your next meeting will be July 19th, and we'll have one item on that agenda, which is 5360 Allison Townhomes, and that involves a preliminary development plan and a preliminary plat. And the last item, the state APA conference is coming up in September, and we still have a couple of spots available for commissioners to attend. So if you'd like to attend, please let Joan know, and she'll get you scheduled.
Okay.
And that's it.
Thank you very much. And with that, we are adjourned.